Mr. Thielen. Jahan Dotson.
You know, when Dotson came into the league, I was really high on him, and I still am. I think he has a lot of potential. He's definitely showing that he's effective in the red zone. He had 7 touchdowns his rookie year, 4 touchdowns last year. He had 49, excuse me, 49 receptions. Um, excuse me, Wiggs. Sorry about that. So, and over 500 yards. I think this year he has the potential of having a better year. I think there's upside there. But man, I'm hot. You know, like I mentioned earlier in our other video about Luke McCaffrey. God, it wouldn't surprise me if these guys have the same kind of a production this year, that they go head to head and they're kind of bouncing back and forth between number 2, number 3 behind McLaurin on the Commanders team. That's just my opinion. You know, I definitely think he's a guy worth drafting, having on your bench. But if you're going to use him as a flex or thinking about using him as a flex, just know that there's going to be some games he's just not going to have production, and there's going to be some games where he could have 1 or 2 touchdowns. Um, so, um, you know, I definitely think he's talented, and it'll be interesting to see how him and Daniels hook up and stuff. So I think there's upside with him. I still think that he's showing that he can be a quality receiver. I just think that 55 right now where we got him is probably about right.
Yeah, I think the position's all right. I don't know personally if I'd have him above Thielen, but I did have him ranked a little bit lower than my last few. Um, I like Dotson. I just haven't seen enough from him to be like completely sold on him, and I actually think Luke McCaffrey is gonna overstep him like early in the season, and I think he's gonna be that wide receiver 2 on the team, and I think he will overshine Dotson a little bit here. Not like a crazy amount, but enough to be like clinched in at that like wide receiver 2 on the team. So like I'm not as high on Dotson this year, but it's really hard to judge with the rookie quarterback coming in and then having, from what I've seen and heard, a really good talent in Luke McCaffrey on the team.
Well, I think between him, Thielen, Robinson, and you could even say Samuel, you know, they could, any one of those guys could flip flop.
Well, I think any one of these 6 could really flip flop, to be honest, especially if Williams and Cooks are healthy all year. You know, it's kind of all just a little bit of a toss up, and a lot of these guys are actually super close when we ranked them, so you never know what can happen.
Yeah.
We're not going to be spot on, but Romeo Doubs.
So Romeo Doubs is again, he's a great young talent for Green Bay. I love the receivers on Green Bay. Um, they've got to me they've got 5 solid receivers on that team right now. Uh, you know, at any given moment, any one of them could step up. You know, last year Dobbs had 59 receptions, 674 yards, and he had 8 touchdowns. So he was one of the guys that, I think it was, mainly, down in the red zone, they love kind of looked for Dobbs or Wicks. I think those were kind of the guys. Wicks is more of a big play guy, as if you guys watched any of the games yesterday. Wicks went off and he had a he had a long I think it was a 65 yard touchdown at the beginning of the game. So that's just how it's going to be with the receivers this year. I think a lot of the receivers production in Green Bay is going to come down to who's going to be out on the field the most as well. So I know Dobbs' his rookie year only played 13 games. I don't know if that was injury related or not. I think it might have been a little bit. But last year he played all 17 games. I like Dobbs. And I think that, he has the potential to be a flex guy. It's just that to me, with the Packers having five solid receivers, they got Reed, Watson, Wicks, Dobbs, Melton. Those five guys are five young, solid receivers. And I think it's all going to come down to who's going to stay out on the field. If Dobbs stays out on the field this year like he did last year, I think that he has the potential to have the same type of year this year. Same kind of production. So, he potentially could have um, a little bit more in touchdowns. Him and Love built some chemistry. So, um, so I like Dobbs as a borderline flex right now. Definitely a bench guy. Again, I hate saying this as a Vikings fan, but I do like the receivers on the Packers team.
Yeah, and we're actually pretty close in rankings here, and I think you and I are kind of on the same page. It's really hard to judge this receiving core because we just don't know who the wide receiver one truly is, or even the wide receiver two or three. We just don't know where it's like set in stone right now. Last year, I think some of the production from Dobbs came from Watson being hurt, and for all we know, Watson can be hurt again. He's been injury prone since entering the league, but he did step up. Him and Jaden Reed both had 8 touchdowns last year, which is nuts for two really young receivers to have, and they both produced quite a bit. It's just with the healthy Watson, at least in my eyes, I think Dobbs falls into that three role on that offense. But I don't know. Again, it's hard because, like you said, there's in my eyes four. I don't know Bo Melton too well, but there could be five really good guys on that roster, and realistically, you maybe could pick any one of those five and you could be fine, even if it's just on your bench. Because for all we know, Jordan Love could throw for another 35 plus touchdowns this year, and all you really need is a touchdown a week for your receiver to have good points.
I agree, and the one thing I will say is from a fantasy perspective, I kind of give Dobbs, a little bit of an edge, um, from a touchdown perspective over some of the other guys on the Packers. And as everybody knows, I don't know, what did Reed have last year. Reed, I think last year he had 8 touchdowns
Yep.
last year too. So, if you look at, it was kind of spread out between the receivers, but I still do think that Dobbs, from the games I watched, he was always kind of one of the primary targets that Love looked at. So I give him a little bit of an edge from a touchdown production, but I think any one of those receivers could overtake one another when it comes to fantasy points.
Yeah, and I know like height not be might not be the best argument, but you look at it too, and I could totally see why they were going to Dobbs over like someone like Wicks because he's slightly taller, but like you got Watson coming in, so maybe if Watson's healthy, it might chip away a little bit at the production of touchdowns, but a bigger body is always nice to have because you can throw the ball up higher, more towards the sideline. You have the reach. So,
Yeah, nope, I agree.
but honestly, any of the Packers, and God, I hate saying this too, you could literally just have sitting on your bench, and it's a good fantasy value because at any week someone could get hurt, or if you start them at flex, you could pop off. Never really know with any of them. I believe this is Khalil Shakir, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
so Shakir last year, um, he 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 ended up with 611 yards on 39 receptions, and had 2 touchdowns. I think his production last year was, along with Dalton Kincaid, was part of the reason why the Bills ended up getting rid of Diggs. Um, so I think that they're really high on Shakir. Uh, I I think that, right around where we have him is probably a good spot for him. Because I do think that he could get lost in the shuffle now that they have Samuel and Coleman and even Mac Hollins for that matter, and stuff. So, I definitely think Shakir needs to be on the bench because you just never know. Rookie receivers, some of them can have a really great year. Coleman could have come out and have a really great year. Some of them really struggle. So if Coleman starts struggling, then Allen's going to start looking Shakir's way along with Samo. So I think he's definitely worth having on the bench. um, and borderline flex guy. Potentially. I think again. Uh, my advice would be if you got someone better on your bench as a flex guy, I would certainly go with them first, at least at the beginning of the year until you see where Shakir kind of falls in Buffalo's plans. I agree with Wiggs from a wide receiver perspective. I'm not really comfortable, with any of the wide receivers on Buffalo's team right now, at least. Given all the changes that they've going on, I think this could be a Kincaid, Knox, James Cook type of year. I could see them mixing it up, kind of like the Chiefs like to do, and spreading it around. So I'm not. I want to wait and see before I even plug in any of the wide receivers on the Bills team, even at a flex option.
Yeah, I think Romeo Doubs of everyone on the board right now is probably the only person I feel comfortable plugging in at a flex spot.
I would agree with that because at any point Dobbs could have a touchdown, which right
Yeah.
away gives you, in a PPR that gives you 6 points right away.
Yep.
Well, seven
Seven with the
plus the
reception.
reception.
Yeah.
So
So like for me, I'd probably swap the two personally, but looking at the depth chart, you can't really sleep on people like Mac Hollins or Chase Claypool, even for that matter, to potentially get some reception. So it's hard for me to judge Shakir. I had him quite a bit lower than you did, um, but that's just because I'm not like fully sold on any wide receiver aside from Keon Coleman in this offense right now.
yeah, and I would agree with you. I think I probably had him ranked a little bit too high. I definitely don't think Shakir is going to be a top 50 receiver this year. I definitely think that some of the other guys we talked about here, especially Dobbs, definitely have more potential of making the top 50 than Shakir. That's just my opinion. So given the
Yeah,
situations,
yeah. If it was in my power of hands right now, I'd probably have him right around that Thielen Wandale range. I'd probably have Dotson higher than him personally, but moving on. That offense is so hard to judge. That's probably the hardest one for me to look at right now.
yeah,
Joshua Palmer, and I want to state this now. I think we have him too low.
yeah, I don't know how to feel about Palmer. He's been with the Chargers. This is going to be his third year. This is going to be his fourth year. Last year he only played in 10 games. He's back healthy this year. Um, he doesn't have a lot of competition for that wide receiver two position. I know some people think that he's going to be, he could be the one. I don't think he will. I think or McConkey is going to be the number one there. Uh, um, I really think that Jim Harbaugh is going to be a run heavy team. I think that all the receivers on this team, just like Buffalo, are you should proceed with caution until you see where they're going to be. Don't get me wrong, I love Justin Herbert. I think he's a great quarterback. I just think that you're going to see a run heavy uh, offense. I don't think that you're going to see a lot of shots down the field. Maybe some here and there. Palmer is he's never been a huge touchdown threat. I don't see that happening this year either. I think obviously his production this year, if he stays healthy, is probably going to go up.
Yeah.
So I will say that. Um, I don't necessarily, I'm not comfortable to say that I would go any higher than or put him in the top 50 right now because, again, I just knowing Jim Harbaugh's history, especially when he used to coach in the NFL with the 49ers and what he did with Michigan, um, you know, I just wait and see. So, do I think he should be drafted? Yes, he's definitely a draft guy. Do I think he's potential flex? Not until I see what the Chargers do with their offense.
Yeah, I could see the argument for that. For me, it'd be a potential flex option depending on who I had on my roster already. Um, which at this point really could be any of. There could be like three or four guys above him, so he might not even be in that conversation. But it's hard to judge, and I agree with you. I think Lad McConkey is going to be the number one receiver there on that team. Joshua Palmer last year, when Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were both hurt, really didn't too much outside of one game where he had 113 yards, but he only was targeted 4 times. So I don't know, it's hard to judge. And he was targeted 10 times and 8 times in 2 other games without those two in, and I don't know, he just didn't really shine like you thought he would once the top two receivers on that team were out and you were the number one guy. So maybe thinking about it now, maybe we have him ranked pretty good. I still think maybe Doubs could be above him, but
I agree with that. I definitely think that Doubs is probably a little bit low compared to some of these other guys.
But at least we got some common ground there, right? Romeo Doubs.
Yeah, so Wiggs and I are a little bit further apart on this. I think Odunze has the potential to be one of the rookies that has a really good year. But I see why Wiggs has him ranked where he does. I mean, they got DJ Moore. They just brought in Keenan Allen. There.
Got Cole Kmet.
So they got Cole Kmet. Yeah. But I do think that Odunze is. It's interesting. Do they even have him?
They don't even have him ranked down. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. They don't even have him on the depth chart. But at any rate, I think that he has the potential to have a decent year. I'm not convinced that Keenan Allen's going to stay healthy all year. Keenan's getting up there in age. I think he's still going to be productive, but I think Keenan could miss a few games, which is going to help Odunze. I think his production is going to come later in the year rather than early in the year because I think he's still going to be getting comfortable with the offense coming in. He's definitely behind two really great receivers in the NFL right now. So, that's, and they also have Kmet and Everett as their tight ends. So I think he's going to be down on the chain and they're going to give him time to grow. So, but as the season goes on, I definitely think that his production could go up, as he gets more comfortable with the offense. And I also think that, like I said, Keenan Allen, I just don't see Allen playing in all 17 games this year. So I think there's going to be an opportunity where he might be able to shine. And if he shines, the Bears aren't going to hold him back. So, Allen only played 13 games last year, 10 games the year before. I mean, Allen played 16 and 21, and 14 and 20. So he's got a history of missing games, and I just see that happening again this year, especially given the fact that he's 32, going to be 33 coming into the season. Yes, he's been consistent for most of the years that he's played and stuff, but you don't draft somebody at number 9 to have them sit on the bench. They're definitely going to use them. So he definitely needs to be drafted. I think he's got a lot of upside, and he's one of those rookies that could potentially go off. Depending on the opportunities that he's given. So to me, I wouldn't recommend plugging him in as a flex or anything right away, but I think you keep him on your bench and you hold on to him, and I think as the season moves along, you're going to see more production from him.
Yeah, the one hard thing for me is just the amount of competition he's going to have to get targets. I understand why they drafted him. Like, yeah, they signed Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's only going to be playing for another, 1 or 2 years after this, if that's they're kind of setting Odunze up to be in a perfect position of he's going to learn from 2 guys that know what they're doing in the league, in DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, and then as soon as Allen's done playing or they trade Allen away or he gets hurt, career-ending injury or something, because when he gets hurt next, it's probably going to be the last time he really gets hurt. He can step into those shoes and fill that role. I could possibly see him being around this 50 spot if, like you said, if Keenan Allen got hurt. But with the competition between DJ Moore, Allen, Kmet, Everett, you throw the running backs in on top of that with Swift, Johnson, and Herbert. It's just It's hard for me to
See,
really
you and
rank
I
them.
disagree on that. I think that the more people that you have available for targets opens it up for other people, because it's just like the Vikings with Jefferson and stuff like that. I mean, some of these guys are going to be double team, and that's going to give other guys opportunities. So I don't necessarily know that that's going to take a knock on him, but I definitely don't think he's going to have 1,000 yards.
No, I don't even know if he'll have more than 6.
So, but I do think that at the end of the year, he could be a receiver that we're talking about from a fantasy perspective that is starting to heat up, and that needs to have the conversation of, okay, should he be an everyday flex?
Yeah, I don't see him being a flex until Keenan Allen gets hurt at all. Personally, I would have him where I ranked him really around that 60 spot, but yeah, I think he's just going to get lost in the sauce. There's too much going on in that offense. It reminds me of, like, kind of.
Well, he's 6'3", 215 pounds, and I definitely could see him being used in the red zone too. So that's something that you gotta keep in mind. With him as well. So he may not get as many targets as the other guys, but he definitely could be a red zone target for the Bears this year. And listen, if he's a red zone target and he gets 8 to 10 touchdowns, that's huge. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's the potential that it could.
There's always potential. I don't see it, but